Welcome to the fourth episode of the Kern Competence podcast, a podcast by Kern about all things precision. Today I am once again joined by my co-host Simon Eickholt. Simon, welcome.
Thank you very much and welcome to you, Marvin.
How have you been, Simon?
Lately, very good. So the weather is a nightmare here. We had a wonderful beginning of the summer and now it's rainy all time, but I have a new bike, riding a lot, always dirty, but happy.
A motorbike?
No, an e-bike.
An e-bike.
Yeah, but
like a motorcycle, but electric motor.
Yeah, I also bought that. So I have a KTM Freeride E, so a full cross bike with an electric engine, which is big fun. But the one I was referring to is really an e-bicycle. So actually downhill oriented, but just with support for cycling. So I'm getting a little bit older, a little bit bigger. So I need some support also going on a bloody bicycle.
Time doesn't stop.
No.
Very nice. Today we want to talk about sales. And I think this is a very interesting subject to a lot of our listeners. If you look at classical sales, so the way everybody is doing it on the market, I think for me this would be totally horrible. I look at salespeople, especially the ones calling here, and there is a couple of companies which are well known. I think one starts also with a K, just like we do, and I think everybody now knows who I'm talking about. And their sales approach is a lot of cold calling, a lot of annoying the potential customer, just like lots of follow-ups. So let's dig into this.
Wow.
Classical sales.
Yeah, that's a big story, and but I don't know how big the percentage is in people listening to our podcast really being involved in sales or where sales is a topic. So actually, I guess a lot are very technically oriented, and if it comes to sales, this is always kind of the pain in the ass. So you have the right product, you did everything very well, the design is wonderful, but actually you also need to sell it. And there are many things. I think I actually mentioned Simon Sinek Golden Circle before. Yes. So we will come to that again today, because sales actually at the end of the day is, I should say, the result, are very much oriented on how well did you work on the 4 Ps, on the marketing part as your, should I say, backbone for your enterprise or for whatever you're doing. But in general,
for our listeners, the 4 Ps are
price, promotion, place, and products. And yeah, let me again come to that. So the product itself, of course, is how it's designed, what it can do. So the whole product development, whatever you do, is it a piece of equipment? Is it a service? Is it whatsoever, luxury or just basic needs in a commodity, makes a difference. But the product and how the product is designed should be very much oriented about your target group and what you really have in mind, the bigger plan. We'll also come to that a little later. And place, this is what we want to talk about today. This is classical sales. So place means, where do you want to sell your product? And so sales is not the same for everything. So depending on what choices you've made in terms of products, it will affect the point place. Are you going through distribution? Do you do it on your own? Is it selling through the internet or whatsoever? So place, where the point of sale is going to take place, is a very important one.
If I can quickly give 2 examples here, which happens to me when people try to sell me something. So one very good example is tool manufacturers. And I would say the majority of tool manufacturers, they write me an email and they want to visit. and then they visit because, well, sometimes I want to see if there's something new. So we allow them to visit once in a while. And then they bring their new brochure and it has all of their tools, and they are like, yeah, we now do drills down to 0.1 millimeter. That's the new thing. And whenever this happens to me, I'm wondering, like, is this something well done in sales? They are visiting, they are showing me something I have zero interest in, and then they are leaving again. And my question to you here would be, is this classical sales, and why are companies still doing that?
Yes, yeah. Classical sales, this is a little bit difficult. So, but in general, you're right. So the way sales has been done in the last decades, 100 years, is exactly like that. You have a product, you have a designated target group, and you want to bring that product to the target group or make the target group buy the product. And the easiest way is you send someone there, showing out the product, talking about the product. You create interest, desire. There's the AIDA model. We also, I think, talked about that before. So attention, interest, desire, and then at the end, action, respectively, the purchase. And if you look at bigger corporations or also the commodity product, so to speak, this is how it usually goes. And there's a big trend of trying to put commodity sales into e-commerce kind of channels. So place would be rather e-commerce, and you just focus on the key accounts, things like that. So you visit the big customers with bigger potential, so you try to leverage your salesperson more. But what they actually do, and when I joined company Kern, this was the first question we always wanted to answer at a fair is, what is new? So what is new? Is there something interesting? Is there something we can sell, buy, or whatsoever? And sales, a part of sales always is the kind of information. So things that have changed, things that are new, products that have been created, and so on. But in classical sales, one of the biggest problems is you have standard sales calls, selling a standard product, and it's tough in a commodity when you have 3, 4, 5 sales representatives of different tool manufacturers coming over, everyone telling you the same. So,
and all of them telling me that their tool is the absolute best on the market.
Yeah, and how big is your confidence in that then? And I think that is a big problem globally in terms of reputation of salespeople. Is they're all liars, exaggerators. They know nothing. They just want to sell product, make money, and I have to say, quite often this is true. So they are not very well educated. They are coming in from cross functions. So there is no, for example, in Germany we have a big apprenticeship program in general running here, very organized. There is no apprenticeship or training program for sales reps. This is not a real job. You know what I mean? And so you've done something else before, and I think that also makes the difference on how a company, how this 4 Ps, and we just threw with 2 of them, how this 4 Ps are thought through. So, and if everybody can go in and sell a product, then most of the time it's, I should say, not very challenging, not very demanding. It's just about making call after call after call, being quick, and then finding the one that the right one at the right time. So where you just have to be lucky, that is in need, and where you can place an order that day. And there are many examples in the market where this has been done like that and still is today.
Okay. This kind of covers a little bit the classic placement. I have a second place question for you. So I mentioned the people basically cold calling you, then visiting, then trying to create desire. The second one is when you're going to an exhibition. And there is, for example, there's one company starting with K. They, for example, sell microscopes. And when you walk by their exhibition booth on a machine tool trade show, they are basically trying to physically drag you onto their booth. So they are standing like in the hallways and they actually grab your elbow and drag you in. And I think this is one of the few companies that actually has a training program for salespeople.
Yeah, might be, yeah.
So we've spoken about the first approach, the cold calling, which is very old-fashioned. Now, this exhibition, dragging the customer in, being very loud, being very flashy. Mm-hmm. Give us your 2 cents on that approach.
So it always depends on what you're aiming for. So if you see as a company that, as we said, just the number of contacts, number of calls is the one that leads to success, this is the way to go. But very often it's just like you hire sales managers to say, okay, we need to do more in less time. So we don't want to increase our chances per call, but we just want to have as many as possible because we believe that's the way to go. And then, for example, you have incentives like that, that sales reps on a booth are incentivized on numbers of contacts a day. And I can say for Kern, for example, and our folks in sales, we don't have a ton of them. And I guess we will talk about this fact a little later on. For us, it doesn't make any sense to have a ton of contacts when we have very little outcome. So we want to put more quality in. So therefore also to get more quality and a bigger percentage out. And this, I think, makes the difference between mostly commoditized products. So let's say if you, and I have a lot of appreciation for those products too, you have a standard milling machine that is very known on the market. You know what you get. There's no extras. It's just like it's a 3x mill or 5x mill or something like that. I would say that's approach that might work. But if you have something that is highly differentiated, something that really is special in terms of its applications that are needed, you need to know the application to make a good call and to be helpful and make a meaningful sales process. So therefore, you don't want to, I would say, hit and run. So you need to have a kind of a relationship and create trust so people start telling you things.
This is a very good lead over to how we are doing things. And you mentioned 2 very interesting points. The first one being quality, and the second being the salespeople having some background. Mm-hmm. So let's start with the human capital. Let's start with our sales managers. We have, I think, 10, 12? 12.
Yeah.
12 sales manager.
Worldwide.
Worldwide, yes.
Direct, yeah. Mm.
Tell us a little bit about them. Tell us about how they became sales managers.
Yeah. So, am I limited in terms of explicit wording?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
So actually, this is the biggest pain in the ass. So the candidates at Kern, this group is very limited. So if you look at the sales reps we do have today, they are all coming out of applications or service, have a lot of experience in milling, in this industry. And the background is so there's a good example. Let's start with that. If one of the sales reps come up and say, I have a project, they get 2 weeks before they make a decision. It's just 2 weeks. We've never seen them before. They heard about Kern from wherever. I usually say, save your breath, save your time. They're not going to buy a machine from us. Why is that? A Kern machine has its price and surely its quality. And there's something behind that. If you buy a machine like that, we need to do some work. And there's two reasons for that. The first is the Kern machine needs a special application. And the second is we need to create this trust and knowledge around the customer application to really ensure that he is successful with that. The worst for us is bad reputation. And I said that before. And therefore, the sales rep really needs to understand the pains and gains. So what is a pain today? What needs to be better? What is the challenge today? What do we actually need to fulfill? And plus, what might be lying ahead of us in the future? And to create loyalty, I think I've said that before, you need to exceed expectations. You need to be better than what is expected. And the only way to do that is to know the customer, to know the application, to really understand what's behind that. And that's how we sell product. And that is the result is that the successful customers we do have is like, for example, so right now Stefan Butzer is passing by my
Stefan is
office.
Stefan is a very good example. When I started at Kern in 2018, he was actually an application technician. And he was doing very, very complicated test cuts. He was doing 5-axis simultaneous milling. And basically, whenever we had a customer request, and we spoke about this in the second episode, and they were like, yeah, we don't think you can manage this, Stefan was one of the guys we put in front of the machine and had them mill that part.
Yeah.
Well, then, sadly, 2 years later, I think it was something like 2019, 2020, he went over to what I would call the dark side.
Yeah, that's what you always say. Yeah, that's a
He
very
became
good
a sales
example.
manager. He's responsible for Scandinavia, which for us, I think, was a little bit of a tough market to get into.
We've been there, but actually, if you ask me about Kern potential, I would say not even half of the markets that would be relevant for us we are in today. And one of the reasons is exactly what we're talking about today is relevant or are good people that actually can build a market. And Stefan is a good example. He has been 18 years in applications. Actually, if he talks to a customer, if he looks at the manufacturing side, the plant or whatsoever, he understands by far better than most of the people what the real challenge is and how we can help. And also, and this is a topic in the part we're in, and this is not just true for Kern, but our applications, our customers' application are top notch. And very often, this is a transition from a customer that we support coming from a commodity or top of commodity into really this niche, this top-notch kind of applications. And for this way, you really need support. You need to have trust. And that's what we said at the beginning also. You need to have a partner, not somebody who's trying to sell you a commoditized product at all costs, but it's more you really need someone to help you to make this transition. And therefore we have guys like him, or Stefan Seller, or Barbara Bergmann, or Thomas Mauer, or Andy Zizek, or Dan de Major, or whomever you want to put out there. They all share this background and the same mission. So nobody's coming to my office and saying, hey, we need to make a good price or something like that for a customer who's making a decision in 2 weeks from now, because everybody knows that's not how it works. So we can be fast, don't get me wrong, it really happens, but very rarely, I would say in less than 5% of the cases, that something develops very quickly. But most of the time, it's really making the mile, so going down the path, and those are the projects that are successful over a longer period of time.
I usually try to avoid traveling with our salespeople because, well, like you said, it's huge pain. But sometimes, especially when I'm in America on a conference, I add like a week of traveling with the sales reps. And for example, Dan DeMajor, he's our sales manager for the East Coast. He used to be an application technician as well, application engineer, and now he's a sales manager for us. And when you visit a customer with him, it's not just like he's not sharing the brochure. He's most of the time, it's like the customer giving us a tour of their facilities. And then they are like, yeah, we do it this way. And then Dan is like, oh, but at this point of your process, you could actually save a lot of time and effort if, for example, you change to hard milling. So if it's a mold maker, he immediately sees they have like that classic approach to mold making, so soft milling, hardening, EDM, polishing. And he immediately sees like that EDM step takes up a lot of money, a lot of time. But also he has the background to sometimes see, so for example, if it's very, very deep rips inside the cavity where hard milling just is not efficient, he's like, well, you probably still need to do EDM there, but at the same time, large surfaces of your mold, you could actually finish by hard milling and save time there. And I think whenever that happens, I'm also very silent. I'm usually not a silent person. I think I'm very much like you there. I take over the conversation and I start having a monologue in front of the customer. But when I see him talking to the customer and he immediately grasps where is our product, where is it able to make a difference? And that is the background I kind of expect of all of our salespeople. And I think I'm being very tough on them most of the time, because it's not just in easy stuff like mold making where I want them to see that differentiation, but also on highly technical topics such as ceramics.
Yeah, there are multiple things in there what you just mentioned. So talking about Dan, for example, is a good example. So you want to be relevant, and what we see is there are customer projects that are in urgent need of a Kern machine. So we see, wow, we could make a big difference. There are others where we say we can make a difference, but it's not as big as for, I would say, the 100% fit. But nevertheless, so both are different also in the way the projects run. So over a certain period of time, you see those very well placed. They usually, we call it, they get kids. The machine gets kids very quickly, because this thing is really making a change quickly. Super relevant technology, making things easier, earning more money or whatsoever. But what you said before is standing there saying, oh, we could do this and that. We are always also struggling, or which is a hustle, that people don't believe in what sales reps say today. It's very easy to say, oh, we could do this and that. And I say, yeah, we could. But actually, I have to deliver parts to my customer in the right quality all the time. And you sell me this, but actually at the end, I am responsible. This is what we try to make a little bit different than the others do, is we really have responsibility also for the success of the process, the product, and what our customers sell to their customers. And this often comes to a point, it's like talking to Dan, is, let me give it any kind of example. Is, oh, we have a chiller standing outside, it's not well placed. Customer made the decision to put it there. We told him it's not working, but Dan, for example, might call me blaming us if we didn't do it right. We knew before. We told him, but he did. Like, it's our problem. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And this is, then roles are transiting. So from time to time, if you ask Sebastian Guggenmoos, we have some sales reps where he always says, who are you working for God's sake?
Oh, I know that feeling. Yeah. I know that feeling very well.
You're still employed by Kern, not by the customer. But this is exactly what we want. So and I'm exaggerating a little bit at that point, but honestly, the sales rep need to know where actually the money is coming from. Of course, Kern is paying for it, but customer and his success is what makes a sales rep successful, and having that understood, this makes us successful also as a sales rep at Kern.
Yeah, I had a moment with Tony Mangold, the president of Kern Precision. We were visiting a potential customer, and he said, I do not care about selling you one machine. I care about selling you the machine and then you buying a second and a third. Yeah. And that customer orientation. You once told me the current customer must be successful.
Yeah.
This is one of the requirements we have in a sale. The customer must be successful. And I think our sales manager, because if you tell this to me, I'm quite sure you told this to our sales managers before. I think this is why they are so much on the side of the customer as well. Because, well, if the chiller isn't working, the customer ain't gonna buy another machine.
Yeah.
So I think this is one of the points where our sales managers are, from the technical perspective, sometimes too far on the customer's side and fight for the customer.
Yeah, but this is important what you said, Marvin, because it needs to work, and at some point also, when we are buying robots or chillers or whatsoever, that this thing is working is part of the Kern. And even so, we have some suppliers we constantly working on quality and whatsoever, and it's a really also a big pain in the ass, but nevertheless this is something that we need to do and are never allowed to stop doing, because of the fact that the whole thing needs to run. And exactly that's what you said before. So we're very proud of things like there's no used micro on the market, there's no one going out of business, etc., etc. And this starts with sales, but also coming back to that, never forget the 4 P's. And let's put price and promotion. This is the 2 things we didn't mention. So price, we talked about that before, is a thing, and promotion is important because of the fact that what you actually, if you're able to communicate the core of what you do, and this is also important. We do that in very different ways and to different channels, and not like everybody else is doing that. At least I like to believe that this is true. But coming back to the product and the place, those 2 things need to be aligned very, very well. This is true for every kind of business. And the topic is also, depending on what you do and where you are, those 2 things need to be very well aligned. And actually, the best product in the world doesn't help you anything if there's no place, if there's no way how to sell it.
Mm-hmm. Maybe this is a nice transition to, once you have your product successfully on the market. Mm-hmm. Now, with most of our customers, they are, I would say, in some niche business. Mm-hmm. What happens if you start selling a product, let's say a luxury good, and you have a limited target group? At some point, I would guess you reach saturation.
True.
Let's dig into this a little bit, and how could our listeners avoid this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is difficult. So actually, the first thing to start with, if you want to have a business that, of course, everybody needs a business to grow. We can talk about the need for growth a lot. So I think in the US, nobody's going to challenge that. For example, here in Germany and Europe, many are going to challenge that. Why does there need to be growth? So it's always, we have limited resources, everything's too much. So
let's dig into this. Why do we need to grow?
Yeah, that's a good thing, because everything is increasing in price. So if you go into automotive, they would say, no, it's not, because what if you're supplying in the automotive, they tell you need to be cheaper every year, because you develop your processes, you improve your processes, so therefore they need less time, less money whatsoever.
But I don't think cars are getting cheaper all the time.
True thing. Yeah. And especially in the last 2 years around the world, we saw inflation making things more expensive. So, like, for example, if we look at the last 2 years, the increase also in salary here is tremendous, and I think people still are not satisfied because of the fact that everything else around us got more expensive, and there's this, as you say, the salary and price increase spiral. So salaries get more expensive to buy more expensive goods, therefore salary needs to be more expensive, it needs to be bigger.
It's a vicious circle.
Yeah. Exactly. So, what governments try to do right now is break this circle, and but that's the topic. So, since we have 2 or 3% inflation a year, usually in Germany, for example, then of course also products need to be 2 to 3% more expensive, respectively. If you are in a commodity and you're fighting also on price, you need to. The second way is to extend, to grow bigger. The more you make, the more actually profit you can make out of this the same margin. So therefore, growth always is important. And as I said, there are 2 ways to grow. The one is with price, the other is with amount or market share. So what you want to do is, or what you want to ensure is that your product is um, sustainable in terms of sustainable in being able to grow, and therefore you need a at least, or the easiest way is to have some big trends that are supporting your product. Like for example, for Kern, let's stay like that. It's miniaturization, it's high efficiency, it's parts getting smaller and more complex. So we even have in terms also of sustainability and lack of skilled workers. These are topics that actually contribute into our products. So therefore, if the bank asks me once a year, how's the future and how is the future looking for Kern, I would say, wow, we're actually in the big mega trends in everything in machinery. So therefore, nothing to worry about. The topic is, the next thing is, as you said, do you have a product in a niche that reaches saturation at one point in time? And this is what you actually don't want to have, respectively. Then coming back to product, you need to have products that actually, again, also 2 ways, allow to sell more product to the same target group or to get a bigger target group. So relevant customer group. So if you look at the Kern Micro, for example, Pyramid Nano, and then Micro HD, and you can split up what is the designated target group that we addressed in the last 10 years. And since Micro HD, there's just a small percentage actually added to this target group, because of the fact, for example, that we could do jig grinding and things like that. But what you want to have is, if you have a product and a designated target group and you reach saturation, you will know. So there's less growth. You will see the same names over and over again. And there are many, I should say, indicators. Like, for example, a company I worked before, 3M, is there's one KPI that says how much of your sales is done with products less than 5 years old, how much sales is within the group of customers that you have since more than 5 years. And what you always want to have is a certain percentage between new customers and existing customers. So cross-selling is a topic, selling to the same, and also attracting new customers, new markets, actually to enable growth. But you have to be careful. You always want to stay within your, I should say, in your focus. You don't want to dilute your company message. You don't want to sell, I don't know, CNC machine tools and, I don't know, microwaves or things like that. That just makes sense for bigger companies that grow through external growth. So buying other companies might make total sense, but not for a company that's growing on its own. So you need to have your personality, your identity.
Okay. With that identity, I think I have a pretty good example. There's these EDC products, everyday carry. To me, this is really surprising because I like my pockets empty, like my trouser pockets. Probably because I'm a little bit fat at the moment and most of my jeans are sitting a little bit tight.
What should I say?
But I often see people and they are running around with a knife in their pocket, a pen in their pocket, a fidget spinner in their pocket. This is like the market of everyday carry products. Now, you can of course buy these very cheap, but there's also companies doing like luxury accessories for people. Now, I would say the target there is very limited because if you're selling a knife for 2,000 bucks in the world, well, how many people are able to afford that knife? And at one point, everybody is going to have a knife. And because it's a very high quality product, they're probably not going to buy a second knife or to replace the first one. So, with your perspective on sales, what would be a good continuation for such a business? Is it make a new knife, a different model? Is it do a different product at a phone case, at a wallet? What would be your tell to those people?
So this is a nice way back to Simon Sinek. I think you don't buy a knife because of the product itself. So this is coming back to you don't buy what you do, but why you do it. So it's the underlying message. This is what really attracts people. And when I would go for a next step, I would try to really determine the target group and what makes people buy Kern machines or knives or whatever. What is behind that? And of course, there always is a need. You could say, I want to have a knife because I cut open parcels every day, or I do this, I do that. But honestly speaking, you could do that with a knife worth 20 bucks or something like that.
That's the knife I own, yes.
Yeah, which is also cool. But let's consider you are the one manufacturing a $1,000 knife, for example. So if you really understand why your target group is enthusiastic about this product, what really is behind that, then you can actually, if that's determined, then you can see and talk to them. That's, for example, what we do, also a kind of sales. The backside of sales is that you get a lot of information in. So the more we know about the pains and gains of our customers, the projects they are working on, the better our innovation process is to become more relevant. And especially with the ones you lose, you see where your product ends and where others start, and you can determine, is this interesting for you or not? But in this segment, let's answer the question a little bit differently. If you look at, for example, and I love cars, and Sebastian is rolling his eyes for sure when he hears he's again making a connection to the car industry. But look at Porsche, for example. Porsche just did the 911 and some very rarely a Porsche Boxster or something like that. So a smaller model. Why did they do a smaller model? Because they see that the way they do things, their target group can be in a lower price segment. How do I do that? I develop a product that is differentiated, that I can sell at a lower price without diluting the bigger one. So a Porsche Boxster or 718 one is called today, and a 911, this is very, very different. The target group, there is some merging together, but it's kind of differentiated. And if you look at what they do today, how they grew is with things like a Cayenne. I would consider a Porsche Cayenne is not a Porsche.
No, definitely not.
It's an Audi made up like a Porsche, but actually there's a new kind of target group. Just like if you go through Munich and you see a Porsche Cayenne, it's always a woman driving it. If you see a Mini Cooper, it's always a guy sitting in there. Yeah, you would consider it being the other way around, but that's like it is. And they have a Panamera today, and they have many other models. And they understood their target group without diluting this core, this 911 that is still fueling the whole company, they have side products that are very profitable for them also, and they made them grow over time. And this is what you see in a lot of consumer business, for example, too. This is if you look at Philips, for example. Philips is super broad, super, I should say, within their commodities, they try to be innovative and always have also this customer focused innovation. And I would say, going back to that, if you buy a knife because of the way it's, I would consider, the guys behind making that knife, the way they make it, and the quality at the end, and it's a CNC but handmade product thought through by those specific guys. I would say there's other products that would apply in this segment, but then you would be still in the same target group. If you would like to actually grow your target group, the first thing I would look at is, are there many people who would actually buy a knife for 250 or 300, for example, and not for 1,000? Would this not dilute my actually position that I have right now and enable me to grow in that field? So if you look at watch, for example, the watch industry, that's exactly what they did in the past. There's different kind of tiers, and you buy an IWC, for example, you buy a Rolex, but they are from between 5 or 8,000 up to 80 or 100,000. So they are able to not dilute their brand or their product and still offering many tiers. That's the easiest, I would say.
Okay. Tracing back to the Porsche Cayenne you mentioned earlier, I now have a very provocative question for you. Basically what they did, they took like a Volkswagen or Audi SUV, slapped on some nicer exterior, a higher horsepower engine, and sold it as a Porsche. Now, let's say we wanted to do that. Is this something you would ever consider? Let's say, for example, Kern buys, I don't think they would do that, but let's do the thought experiment here. We buy a Hermle without enclosure. We slap our enclosure around it, and we slap a little bit of our thermal management into that machine. And then you have a slightly better Hermle, and on the outside it says Kern. Is this something you would consider for our brand?
No, I wouldn't. So, as you know, I have a lot of appreciation for Hermle. I think
Me
it's
too.
It's a great company. No, that wouldn't work. Not because of, oh, could we do it? Yeah, surely we can, but this would dilute our message for sure. So if you look at micro HD, this is what we can do in terms of tiers. So if we want to broaden our
portfolio,
so we would go in a different kind of direction, but it needs to be a Kern machine. So if you look, for example, there's a Micro Pro out there, and I'm telling a secret right now. The Micro Pro is there for the procurement departments most of the time. So this is still a superb kind of it's a very good product concept, but actually it's not very relevant for us in terms of manufacturing. It's relevant for us to show where the Micro Vario and a Micro HD is, because you don't want to see a Micro Vario being, I would say, the standard product that you can compare. So Micro HD will the Micro Vario, will still be a product that will outrun most, if not every other 5X machine in certain kind of applications. So therefore, this was important to put it in there, more in the sense of orientation. So we don't build a lot of Micro Pros.
I can't remember when we built the last one, but you're very correct in terms of that the purchasing department can see what it is. And I think this is something I've experienced a little bit in the last year and a half. because money isn't exactly cheap at the moment. I mean, you get some interest on it. It's also not as loose in the pockets of our customers.
Yeah.
And 3 years ago, basically everybody who was interested in a micro bought an HD because it was always like, yeah, I want the top model and my money is not earning me any interest. And now a couple of people are taking a, let's say, a more objective and sensible decision, and we are selling, I would say, more Varios at the moment than we did 3 years ago.
Yeah. So the actually 3 years ago the share was roughly 10 to 12%, and now it's 25.
And sometimes you have a customer and they know the Vario is the correct machine, but they are like, but I want the HD. And what I sometimes tell them is, remember, up until 2019, when we launched the HD, this was our best machine.
Yeah.
The Vario was the top-end model, and it is a fantastic machine. It's not the El Cheapo Kern. I sometimes, for example, I once told Nick, P3D Creations, he has a Vario, and I jokingly told him, yeah, you bought the El Cheapo Kern. And it isn't. It isn't the cheap Kern. It's a fantastic machine which can manufacture parts at the highest level. But for those purchasing departments who never get that, you kind of need the pro to show them like, okay, this is the mid spec and not the low end spec.
Yeah, and there's also the point. So if you can read an annual report, you will see, for example, with Kern, what kind of material cost we have. So if you compare that to our competition, you will see, wow, there's a lot more stuff in a Kern and more expensive stuff than with the others I see. So, and that's a true thing. You can see that, but actually, this is the point also we make with having a Pro Vario and an HD. So you get what I want to see is some clarity, some transparency on how we price, and therefore, within Kern, I always say the average rebate you get for Kern is by far lower than with anybody else because of the fact that this machine has a far bigger value, also in terms of the stuff we put in there. So we talked about the supply chain and the quality of product that goes into that a lot so far already. But this is how we make things transparent. And this is a point on coming back to product, where you see we don't buy a cheaper machine and make it a Kern. It needs to be designed from scratch and done, let's say it like that, perfectly. So it's not just like we do this and that and then it works out fine. No, it's not. And the reason why you still can't buy a used micro on the market is exactly that. So once you have this thing, it's going to contribute and it's going to exceed your expectations of a longer period of time. Coming back to the Porsche Cayenne, why are you driving that thing? It's because of the fact that Porsche has a name, the brand is strong, and also the Porsche Cayenne is contributing into this brand properties, into this, how would you call that, perception. So, and you drive a Porsche, and some of them is just like, oh, I drive a Porsche. You see what I can afford. It might be the same for the one or the other with a Kern. You say, okay, so I'm at a point in my development, company-wise, where I can afford a Kern and I need a Kern. That just shows. So I'm not going to mill aluminium blocks or something like that. Nothing against milling aluminium blocks, but so I need to get shit done and really complicated stuff. And therefore you might buy a Kern. And we see that more often, that people buy a Kern because of marketing reasons. And you want to show to others, like wearing that knife or wearing that watch, or if you want, driving a Porsche means I'm successful, I can afford that. The other side might be I'm driving a Porsche Cayenne and not an Audi because it's higher quality. It is better service. It is all of that. And the value of this Porsche Cayenne will be better than with a VW Touareg or Q7 from Audi or whatsoever. There are good reasons for that, and you need to know all those reasons. Actually build a good part of this portfolio that is valuable for us, for you and your customers.
Okay. Because we are slowly approaching the end of our podcast, a lot of our listeners, I would say, from the feedback we've gotten on the first 3 episodes, they are running their own business. They are doing contract manufacturing. A lot of them are tinkerers. They have their own products as well. If you could give them some advice, because I would also say a lot of them are very young and new to the market. If you could give them some advice on, maybe let's first start with, what should their product be like? What are the principles? And this is a summation of our podcast so far, a summary. Let's start with a product. What advice can you give them for their product in order to sell well?
I'd say at the beginning, you shouldn't make it too complicated. So if you look at what we've done at 3M, we did a lot of tests and customer consultations and doing this and that research to figure that out. I think a strong thing is, I hate when people say, as a marketing is just common sense. It really isn't. It's a bloody nightmare because you have a lot of variables that you don't have under control. But what you do have is your gut feeling and your experience in the industry and knowing people, which is what makes marketing in general interesting for me, because it's all about also relationship, knowing people, and making the transitions in your thoughts to a certain goal or product. So if you have a good idea and you see, if you check not necessarily only with your friends, but actually with the community, which I experienced to see being very honest most of the time, you thinking about the product, you need to start first and go in a certain direction. You need to find your identity, and identity is much more important today than it has been 50 years ago. So today you can manufacture and sell a product that actually doesn't need to have an urgent or address an urgent need. So there is, you could say it's whatsoever luxury, what you said before. It's more about giving you identity by wearing this thing, so showing what you stand for. And most of the things that I saw, especially in this community, are relevant, fantastic, and adorable. So that is the thing I would start with, and don't be too afraid. So to take some risks on that, and you will see. But failure also, and the Americans do that by far better than the Europeans actually. Failure is totally okay. So making things better, you don't always have to be right the first time. So in the meanwhile, that's my feeling. I have to be right all the time. This is what talking to Sebastian is. Wow, making a mistake is always extremely painful. And this is what you want to avoid, of course, but do some experiments and find the right spot. And it's okay to not hit it at the first place. And especially when you see what works and what doesn't work too good. So especially when you do more than one thing, or you get your customer feedback, you're able to improve, and you will also be able to make decisions. And this is where it gets a little bit more professional and complicated, to see, okay, where is my opportunity to grow?
That opportunity leads us to the second P, placement. So having opportunity in the back of our mind, what would you tell our listeners for placement? What is the advice you can give someone starting out?
Yeah. So if this is a very special luxury product, an investment good or whatsoever, then I said the possibilities you have today are nearly endless. So a lot of people appreciate buying directly from you. So we try to avoid also dealers unless they are really helpful. And actually the dealers we have that are successful are very much like the folks we have here as sales reps. So you try to go direct, because going indirect always is expensive. But of course, if you do a a daily a good that is for daily use, like a pen or a toothbrush or whatsoever. So you need to consider at some point in time, how do I address my big target group with a product that might not be something like a car, or that is in a smaller value and therefore usually bought in commodity stores or whatsoever, convenience stores is the right word. So then placement is a big decision. So you might not want to go direct, because if you just leave the big chains or the big platforms out, you might not be able to reach your potential. And your product also needs to be, if you put it into direct competition, it needs to be competitive in terms of also price and
Very good. The
and
third
quality.
P. Now let's talk about price. I really don't have any background in sales, but something, if I just think about, well, there's two ways you can approach it. You can go immediately to your target price, or for example, when you're launching a product, you could have like a special lower price with the goal of increasing it over time. And seeing your face, you have a strong opinion on this. Go for it.
I do. There are three ways and for me, there's only three ways. It's the cost-related part. So you want to sell a product with a profit. So therefore, you go up from cost and you need an uplift. The second, of course, is competitive. If you have a comparable product that is much lower in price and has the same performance, you're going to be in trouble. So competitive pricing is a topic. And the third is value-based. So you might have different target groups, but one and the same thing has different value. Let's go to, for an example, is adhesives. You might be able to sell a certified adhesive to Boeing or Airbus. Bad example. To
Europeans laughing.
For example, the car industry is certified you get a high price on that, but you can use the same glue, like for example in household usage, where the price needs to be 10 times smaller. So it's all about the value of the value of the product in the specific target group. A very good price is made up on those three pillars. And it's not everything is equally important. No, it differs from product to product. So what I would never do, and this is price delusion, you will see that the more... Kern's way, for example, is I'm never afraid of a final negotiation. I'm never afraid of procurement, because I can prove what we put in. We can prove what value we have. We actually, if you're as a procurement officer and you're completely stupid, you can do the numbers and see the margin we make. So, and I can say, this is the part that I'm willing to give, and the rest is in the product. And if it's just about the price, and you're not able actually to leverage this investment through the performance of the product, but just in price, and price needs to be 20% lower, and I say, thank you very much, this is not the right product for you then. And coming to that point, so I would make an honest, good price I always feel good about, that is profitable, talk about cost plus, but is to some extent unnegotiable. And the price to the customer should be set, should be fair. And if you reach that point, actually that doesn't need to be an introduction unless you want people to try, you want to come over a certain hurdle. So every rebate that we discuss also internally here needs to have a reason. If Stefan comes up and says, wow, I need a 10% discount for this and that, I said, did you bang your head? So this is just like, for example, we have a university and it's like this, and oh yeah, we can talk about that. Or we have a partner that wants to put that machine into their customer center or something like that. Of course, there's something possible. But in general, if we would do that all the way, no.
There'd be no profit.
No, and I would that would be my advice. If your price is made up well, and look at, for example, what I love is the Van Westendorp way to do a price. This is, you can look it up. Van Westendorp is a relatively cool guy, coming up with some very simple questions. You can really make it more complicated, and you will get a very good price point trying to get those three pillars together. And once you have a good price, you can set your boundaries, and then you're good. Your product needs to go and needs to be successful without giving tons of rebates, because then you've done something wrong. And rebate is also for, I would say, commodity. So if you're fighting against others, or you want to manipulate the customer, this is just like, I put 20% on top and then I go down 25%. Wow, 25% is much more than I get from Kern. I said, yeah, and there's a good reason for that. They need to. If a procurement guy tells me, well, I get 20% from XY, I said, yeah, they need to.
Okay, very nice. Now we have the last P, promotion.
Yeah. So if you've done if you've done your price right and your product with everything that lives inside, and for us this is a living thing. So, and the successful products you see outside, this is a kind of a living thing. And I don't want to refer to Apple, but you know all those examples, but many others. This is an emotional, and yeah. And promotion actually is the least important of all of those. Also depends of the product, but usually overall, I would say it's the least important. And it's, if you've done the first three right, it's the easiest, because the only thing you need to do is tell the truth and say what you do. And if it's about, for example, for the smaller business, for the startups, for this marvelous product ideas that are out there today, you just need to market it and tell the story. There are many things out there, like the storytelling, like the testimonial things. So things we do today, for example, is in terms of promotion, if you look at our brochures, we try to mimic also the sales process. There's one thing, a little bit of a secret too. The brochure is not there to inform our direct customer contact. So like, for example, if our sales reps go to the head of department, or the operator, or the group of operators, they actually don't need a brochure for themselves, because we talked about all the relevant things and they know, they've been here, they experienced it. The brochure is just there to put them into the position to also sell this to their upper management and to their procurement. Therefore, the brochure is changing all the time. And this is, I think, the essence also of promotion is you want to support your story. You want to support what you stand for, your product. And it's not necessarily always about creating awareness. So what I see extremely often is just awareness. You see, promotion is trying to say, oh, here's a company called Kern. Yeah, what should that be good for? So we want to be known in our relevant customer group. And this is the challenge today. For example, if you do something new, we want to be able to have access to this target group, to this customer segment. And getting access to this customer segment, you need to see, okay, how are they organized? Is there media that they always look at? And this is where you want to be. This is where you create awareness. But you don't want to be the sponsor of a Bundesliga football club or something like that. That would be total nonsense for Kern. This would be a waste of money. And the next thing is really being creative as you are with your products, being creative on how to actually promote your product, to show the properties, to show what it stands for in a smart, clever way, because that's what people like. They like creativity. So, and coming up with things that not everybody is doing is a good thing. So if you're selling sponges on Amazon, I would talk differently, of course. So, but there are others that can talk about that by far better than I do. But if you have a commodity, highly differentiated product, it's, actually the topic promotion follows the product and the other two pieces there.
Very good. We have to wrap it up now because you have a meeting afterwards.
Thank you.
We always end this podcast with a question to you because I always ask you to tell our listeners something from your last month. It can be something positive, can be something negative, it can be something that happened to you in your private life, it can be something that happened at the company. Just like a remarkable thing that happened in the last 30 days.
Okay, I'm again not prepared for the question, but something that comes to my mind immediately is last. I hope they are not listening to that podcast, but I think the risk is relatively low. Last week I was traveling with Stefan Zeller to Switzerland to actually negotiate a machine for a very small company, and there's a transition from the father who built the company. I think it's 5, 6, 7 people working there. Let me see. So we had a breakfast together. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people, and the father is slowly moving out, and his son is taking over, and he is super ambitious and has plans and targets and whatsoever. And while they were talking a lot also about the business, so it was a sure thing. They want to have a Kern machine, and it was really actually this was the facility, the you kind of call it plant. It was a house actually, and they have machines in that house. His mother is living on the first floor within the factory. Don't want to call it factory. It's really a relatively small house, but everybody was super motivated, and they were all super happy to make that step. And for me, it was special to be there, and for them, it was special for me to be there. It's like, is the CEO coming to every kind of? And I said, no, absolutely not. But Stefan said, you will like those guys, and we had a wonderful evening together before having dinner. We had a lot of topics to discuss, nothing actually machine related or something like. We talked about flying. They're both pilots, and we talked about many things. Stefan and I got a little bit too drunk that evening, while the others didn't. It was a little bit awkward. So they were having water and whatsoever, and we had a bottle of wine and 3 beers or so. But that's it. Yeah, and then it was super fair because of the fact that we knew they want to buy the machine, but nevertheless there was the also I felt the pressure there. We want to have the machine there, and we want to support them also on their way into having a Kern and into a new business and a new target group, and fits perfectly to our discussion today. So they don't have access to the target group they want to address. But this is what they're working on. And it says when we're leaving, I have 6 months from now to actually get customer orders in. And I said, I have so many examples of others that have done that. Take the risk of having a Kern and actually being successful in a short period of time, of really also getting work and contracts and products on this Kern. And this was special for me because I really like them a lot. They're super sympathetic, and we had a wonderful time, even if it was 7 hours in the car, back and forth, so 14 hours on the car, but it was absolutely worth it and a very nice experience. Marvin, before we finish, good, bad experiences. Is there something remarkable that happened to you since the last episode?
Yes. 1 week ago, I got my machine. And if Sebastian Guggenmoos is listening, he's probably screaming to the heavens, it's not your machine, it belongs to the company. I got my machine. We just have to put it at that point. It's my machine. It got delivered last Friday. And this morning, before we started, I was actually milling a last-minute urgent part for our development department. And it's basically just a fixture for some ceramic bolts to do some research on error separation, I think. And it's a stainless part. And I seldom mill soft stainless. So the material I was milling was like 1.4305. In America, this would be 303. So it's like, I would say it's probably the most milled stainless type ever, and it's considered to be pretty easy to mill. Now, for me, stainless is always exciting because I've probably milled stainless like 10 times in my life, if at all. Because I mill a lot of soft materials for mirror finishing, and I mill a lot of the really hard stuff. Hard stainless, 64 HRC, all of the ceramics, semiconductors. I mill the exciting stuff. And, well, I remember milling my first stainless part on a Kern, and I think I broke like 5 tools because I had no clue about cutting data whatsoever. Nowadays, I know how to mill stainless, but it's still something I don't really feel comfortable with because I'm just not used to it. But this morning I was milling it, and it's just a fixture. It has very loose tolerances for a Kern part. It's like 50 microns all over. It's nothing special. I could probably just mill it without once measuring. But obviously there's some sense of honor involved when you do a part for development. And I was doing the first side this morning, and they have 50 microns, and they wrote it down on the technical drawing, 50 microns flatness. And well, I didn't move it onto a CMM, but I was just probing it on the machine. Everything was within 1 micron. And then I started on the second side, did some soft jaws, put it into the soft jaws, did the second side, and then I was swiveling over and probing for parallelity, because this is also something they have. Everything was within 2 microns. And then I probed a couple of the bores, and there's not even tolerance on the bores on the drawings. It's just like standard tolerances. And the outside diameter was 0.7 microns off. And I mean, this is a part in a material I'm not familiar with my standard tools. These are workshop quality tools hanging all the time in the machine. I mean, I cleaned them properly, I measured them properly, and it was just like a CAM program I wrote while packaging up some samples to send to the exhibition because the lorry driver was coming, and I was in a bit of a rush. And just everything was in single-digit micron range, and that's pretty cool. And that was a good thing this week.
Perfect, very good story.
Okay, Simon, thank you very much for your time. I think this is a very interesting podcast. We try to mix it up a little bit, having like one very technical podcast and one more sales and marketing oriented podcast, because this is about all things Kern and all things precision. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Marvin. And what I would be really interested also is there, from the community, from the listeners out there, are there topics you're interested in, you want to have covered, or what we should talk about? So I would highly appreciate getting some input on that. While I think the next couple of podcasts are going to be very technically oriented.
Yes. In terms of that feedback, the community can reach out to me, of course, via Instagram. But also, if you're listening to this podcast on Spotify, there is like a feedback button in Spotify, and we are actually reading the feedback. So feel free to reach out.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Marvin.
Bye-bye.